Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. Austin Linney here, and I have the honor, the privilege of having Miss Caroline here. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Guys, we have a real treat here today. If you meet anybody that I've met, especially in the last couple months, they always pick this human being as the catalyst to why they're doing so good, because she inspires so many people. So it's really an honor to have her here. And I'll kind of let you tell everybody what you do. You kind of start your story where you want, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so I'm honored to be here. I'm glad we finally got to connect. It's been a while. So, let's see. Who am I? I'm Carolyn. I'm a proud mom of 3. As you can see in the back, I am an author, international speaker, business strategist, and founder of Fierce Network. What I love, and my calling is to help people, one, connect with other amazing people who are heart-centered and are discovering what their passion and purpose is in order to feel that fulfillment that some people are missing. And also to help people realize what they, maybe something that they've been kind of putting off and they want to be able to lean into. Mm-hmm. So side hustles, creating more income, identifying what that purpose is in order to pay it forward and help other people. Mm-hmm. And that falls into a bit of adversity advantage. So in the past 6 months, we've seen a bit of adversity, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know what the rest of our lives have been like, but just in the past 6 months, we've all experienced a bit of adversity.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do with it? How's this going to work? And so taking that opportunity to see what are the advantages to the adversity that we've experienced and what can we make of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I just got off 3 coaching calls, and it's you're not removing negativity. You're not removing obstacles. You're not removing the world shutting down. But what you're doing, I think, and what you're alluding to, is you're cultivating a mindset that can adapt to those situations and be surrounded by the right amount of people. And I think that's what you've done with the Fierce Network, and that's what you've done with your work and all your entrepreneur stuff. And isn't that really what it's all about at the end of the day? I mean, just creating a mindset that can take on anything, right? I mean, because I don't know if it's just you or your network, but there's people around me, regardless of what's happening out there, they're thriving right now. Maybe they're looking at it as they're able to spend more time with their families and be there for their kids and stuff like that. So it really is about the way you look at it, correct?
Correct. It is the way you look at it. It's even when things seem dark and dismal, how do you separate and kind of weed through what that is to pull out those dark things that might be able to serve you? So, for example, when I talk about adversity advantage, it comes from a space of me as an entrepreneur looking back at all the different things and occurrences that have happened within my short lifetime and thinking, well, what was this all for? Why? And in really diving deep into, okay, all of this couldn't have happened for nothing. So how can I pull out something I can use? Now, I went from Salvation Army to PhD because that's what I knew as a way to get out. That's how I knew how to get out of the circle of poverty. That's how I knew how to get out of the circle of abuse. And then realizing and looking back through the different networks and people that I've met. So One Life Fully Lived introduced me to amazing humans who want to give back. And then that connected me, and that was a door to further networks and groups in order to challenge my mindset and also elevate what the possibilities were for me. So someone coming from a mindset and a perception, like you just said, it's about perception, where I've experienced sexual abuse from both men and women. I've experienced emotional and physical abuse most of my, well, all of my childhood, and then on to my adult life as well. And looking back and trying to figure out, okay, there has to be somewhere, not saying that the occurrences were right, but there has to be somewhere that what happened to me was happening for me. And how can I flip that script around it? So looking back and kind of mind mapping that from a removed perspective, I had a mother who struggled with mental illness and the ups and the downs and the all arounds. And sometimes it was really, really good. And sometimes it was really, really bad. In dealing with the emotional sways of the ups and the downs, and then thinking back on that and thinking, rather than a mindset of why me, and I'm not saying that all the things that happened were right, but I'm saying, how can I pull some type of advantage from it? And what I've learned is that I'm extremely resourceful. And in that, I've been able to figure out like how to feed my little sister and how to make something out of nothing, how to be in a room where there's a lot of perhaps emotion or stress, and I'm the calmest one in the room that can think clearly. So those are advantages to a very chaotic upbringing. Same thing with living in low-income housing, being on food stamps, trying to escape the circle of poverty. You have to sit down and take a deep breath and think about, all right, I want a better life for my daughter. I want to be able to self-sustain. And how do I do that? Well, looking back on my life and figuring out how to be resourceful, figuring out how to, when you have nothing, you get pretty darn resourceful. And so I was able to escape the circle of poverty through resourcefulness and identifying that, what are the advantages? And through doing that, escaping the circle of poverty and the circle of abuse, I was able to add that to my resume of being resourceful as a business strategist, as building systems and turning businesses around. Because when you have nothing, you get pretty crafty at figuring out how to get something. And so therefore, I aligned my college education with and strategy with my own life skills to see the picture differently and build successful systems. So I've been able to turn nonprofits around who were losing money in order to make it so that it's their most profitable, make their most profitable years.
And it was really, I guess one of the questions I get asked the most is that, how do you get to a place where you can see it as an advantage? I think one of the biggest issues, and it took me a long time to get there, is that I realized that my parents were just operating like in the capacity that they had Like, I don't think we as kids, we put our parents up on this pedestal. And then if you start, like you said, if you start mapping it backwards and you look at my dad's father, it's pretty evident the reason that certain things are. But I guess we're so consumed. I guess the questions I'm trying to say is, you're so consumed in your own negativity. How do you get somebody out of that to see something different?
It's a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And how I did it, because, when I was standing in line at the Salvation Army and I didn't know where my next meal would come from, holding my daughter, fearful for my life, paralyzed by overwhelm, uncertainty, and then barraged with triggers, PTSD, I needed to be able to move forward in some way. Mm-hmm. And an endearing person said to me, "It's okay, Carolyn. You can get through this one day at a time." Mm-hmm. And everyone on this planet has probably heard of one day at a time. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful concept. However, when you're just struggling to get through the next 5 minutes, the whole day, forget it. Mm-hmm. And so that is where my BFF method was born. I created it out of survival, but then now it helps thousands of people today. And this is how I got to that point of reducing the victim mindset, is taking a deep breath, focusing on one goal. And in that instant, as I'm standing there with the fluorescent lights coming at me, people from all different walks of life, and just wanting to physically move forward one step with my body immobilized by this fear, I needed to become present. I needed to be able to focus on just move forward. And then I had to take fierce action. And the reason I say fierce is because what I was doing is I was tapping into my sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight. And I was using that emotion as fuel and honing it to push me in a positive direction that served me, because I could have chosen to just completely quit, or I could have chosen to push forward just 5 minutes at a time. And as I honed that, like anger and fear and all these different emotions just barraging you to where your body can barely even move and you just want to give up. When I was able to say, you know what? Yes, I have this emotion. Doesn't mean that it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but I need to be able to move forward. And how am I going to use this emotion to push me forward to where I need to go? Mm-hmm. Not to where I want to go, not to, this, like, it would have been easy to consume and lose myself. Mm-hmm. But I needed to move just 5 minutes. And once I had done that, and I learned this method and I practiced it over and over again, soon I'd gotten to 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Soon I had gotten to that whole day. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that, you're getting through that day, and another memory pops up, another emotion pops up, and it can kick you right back to where you were. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that you can't reset again. Mm-hmm. And that's 5 minutes at a time. And as I got better at honing this craft, I was able then to not only look at a week ahead, I was able to look at a year ahead and reverse engineer it down to 5 minutes, so that every decision I made was directly related to that 1 year goal. And that 1 year goal was to get out of low income housing, which I did. Mm-hmm. And I moved out within 1 year. Mm-hmm. And so, and then I just kept continuing on and using it. And as I did that, I was able to choose a new goal. So it was breathe, taking a deep breath, getting focused. So B for breathe, F for focus, and S for fierce action, your new best friend. You're welcome. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to then address the victim mindset. I was able to practice more of, like you said, my parents did what they could with what they knew. So how do I address what I know? And how do I focus on that in which to build my repertoire around coping. Because, let's be honest, it doesn't always get easier. We just learn how to cope better.
Yes. No, I was telling somebody the other day, like, I don't want to drink anymore. Like, it doesn't ever cross my mind, but that doesn't mean that, like, I sure as hell wouldn't love to sit on a patio and listen to some music and have a whiskey. Like, I'm romantic about alcohol, but I just know that my purpose is better served this way. That doesn't mean that it's easier. It just means that that's not what I need anymore. And there was a part of my life that was that. But what I love about that is, I love my coaching because it's very contrary. Like, I got a lot of guys that are a little straight laced, and I'm like, go in the woods, take your shirt off, and like just start running and screaming. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because it's something that you've never done before, and you're just going to have that moment of that out of body experience that might shift something in you. Because I realized something about people. This is a very important thing to me, and I started looking at corporate America, and I started seeing the simulation. When people don't have opportunities or they don't have a chance to grow, they feel stifled, and it shuts everything down. Mm-hmm. And so all they're looking for is a chance to be better. And as I work with recovery people, there's so much shame wrapped up into all those things. The shame is what kills them. It's not that they're not great. It's not it's not that they can't go work out. It's not that they're not smart, but there's so much shame they have to work through. And it's hard. It really is hard to deal with it. But I think what's great, and what I've realized is that those emotions, this is very hard for people to understand because I just went through a divorce this year. It's okay. Like, it's okay to not be perfect or like have those emotions hit you. It's when you don't deal with them or you distract yourself, that's when it'll trip you up, right? What do you tell people about that?
Exactly. To stay on your game. It's really, and yes, and I resonate with that because I got divorced 4 years ago this December. Mm-hmm. And really going into even further what you said, getting even deeper into your authenticity, mm-hmm. and staying on top of it. Because as you're continually, adding to your toolbox, mm-hmm. because there's this concept of, in life, you're either in a storm, you're just coming out of a storm, or you're heading into one. Mm-hmm. So what are you equipped with to weather the storm? And so staying on top of, like, I'm sure, your morning routine. What is that? What are you filling your head with? How are you standing guard at the door of your mind? Mm-hmm. What are you doing? So this comes right back to what I teach in my Fierce Network, what I teach to my clients in Fierce Academy is, what are you doing right now in order to fill your mind with things that serve you? So just for example, in the morning, is your cell phone the first thing you pick up, and is it the last thing you put down? If that's going on, you might need to review that, because it's feeling, how much is it controlling you compared to you controlling it? Mm-hmm. Same thing with, then taking that deep breath, focusing on, hey, I need to focus on listening to a podcast. Mm-hmm. Pulling up Austin's podcast in the morning compared to flipping through Facebook, right? Mm-hmm. And what are the things that I'm filling my mind with? Mm-hmm. Taking a deep breath, focusing on what that is, and then taking fierce action, meaning that emotion of, that addiction of flipping through that blue screen, compared to listening to a podcast that might change your mindset and flip your script.
Mm-hmm. One of the more interesting things, because I got laid off in March too, and I had an epiphany after I talked to one of my buddies who's a coach in Colorado, is we in America, meaning when you get divorced, laid off, your company fails, whatever that be scenario, we're too quick to pressure people to have the answer. Instead of giving ourselves, like, let's just call it what it is, Caroline. I hopped in a car to drive to Austin and wound up in California. and I was out in the desert for a while, and then I went to Oregon. And it wasn't I wasn't working. I was still, doing some things, doing the podcast. But I just needed the space to like realize what the next move was going to be. And I don't think that we allow ourselves, and sometimes you don't have that option because you have kids or whatever, but I don't think we allow ourselves to even take a day or 2 days to like separate. We're so quick to get to the next thing that we don't ever put a marker down. Like, this is a big shift in my life. Let's give it the time necessary. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, definitely. And that is so true, because people, when you get divorced or like when you have a job change, people are like, hey, you unmatched? What's going on? What's going on? Who you with? Who you dating? Like, hold up. Let's take a little pause here.
It's 13-year marriage. Let's give it a second. Yeah.
15 years of my life, I might need a little break, And so, what's wonderful is that through what I've learned and what I've practiced is like, hey, you know what? No, I need to take a pause. And that's really what I did for the first year of my divorce, is really taking pause, diving deep into my authenticity, really understanding, how did I get here? And honoring that 15 years. How did I end up here? What was that closure of the chapter?
Sure.
And how do I honor that? The ups, the downs, the good, the bads, and the uglies. How do I honor that space? Because, even no matter what way the relationship may have ended, you still have that time that was invested. And how do you honor that? And really getting present and diving deep into ego and how and what that means. Because I took a full year of deep diving into authenticity, and then the next year I used in self-love, and then diving deeper into that to really understand that self-love journey. Because we think, oh yeah, we got this down. Like, I know what I'm doing. But do you really? Because you're not the same person you were last year. You're not the same person you were 5 years ago. So how do you know that you are self-caring and loving yourself? Because we're continually evolving, and what we need might change. So deep diving into, what does self-love really mean? And I challenged myself in identifying, okay, great, I'm going to call myself out on this, and thinking about, I'm sure you resonate with this. Let me think about when you had that first date, you have some chemistry with somebody, right? And you're like, oh, I think I might like send a nice little text message or a little voice message or something nice for them, right? Because you're excited. What if you learned how to love yourself in that same way, to where you get excited to hang out with you? When you think about yourself and you think about the great things you could do for yourself, just like you think about for somebody else. Ooh, we're going to go and do a couples massage. Ooh, we're going to go and do this and that, whatever together. That excitement that you get. What if you took the time to go so deep that you could truly understand yourself so much that you've identified that authentic journey to self-love?
Mind blown. But there's so many things there. But one of my favorite guys is Kyle Cease, and he talks about how when you first meet somebody, and you're in an elevator and she's an attractive girl and you like her, he's like, how's the weather? Like, and he's like, what if you actually said what you wanted to say? Like, you're very attractive and I have no words right now. I'm thinking of something to say. He goes, well, then the relationship would actually start on like an open and positive note, right? And it's funny, right? And I think about the marriage, because let's be honest and let's call it what it is. No matter whose fault, there's fault all to blame. But when that all comes down and the wall of like, we don't have to like lie to each other anymore, there's some real truths that come out that if you want to have an ego about it and you want to not look at it, you're not going to get better. But, regardless of what happened with me and my ex-wife, there's some truths in there that were real. We both both gave up on each other for many different reasons. But like with me and my coach, we were basically playing poker at the end. Like, who's going to make the first move? We're so miserable forever, for 5 years, 6 years. But what's interesting, and I'm not saying it's perfect because, you're still dealing with a lot of emotions, but who we are on the other side of this for both of us. I mean, if I would have known this 5 years ago, I would have done it 5 years ago. I mean, we're so much more happier. She's happy. She feels a new lease on life. I feel you know what it was? Because I was weak, and I finally took it and was like, I'm gonna take this separation. Like, I finally said yes. Like, I had the opportunity 3 or 4 times. I didn't take it. Sal, we all know Sal, my little Sal, my favorite human in the world. He said, Austin,
love Sal.
He said, you truly have another opportunity for 50 years. Take it. Just fucking take it. And I said, you know what? You're right. I'm scared. There's a lot of emotions. We own property together. I love her family. All these things that you think, because let's be honest and let's call it what it is. You and I, we did the hard thing. And we're gonna benefit from it later on. But I know this. I know that there's a lot of people out there, and I hate to put a number on it, but there's a lot of people out there that are just staying together to stay together because they don't want to do the hard work, and they're going to pay for it over the long run, right?
Oh, that's right. So right. And that comes right back to, what are you doing? How are you staying present? How are you staying focused? And how are you channeling that emotion? Because there's a whole hell of a lot of emotion in there. And, what's beautiful, just like, my ex, we get along great. We celebrate holidays together. We co-parent. We talk to each other every other day. It's in not saying that there was absolutely no part of that was easy. None of it. But, getting present, focusing on, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling the greatest right now. I don't need to pick up the phone and call. Ooh, that text message hit me wrong. I need to take a step back.
Oh my God, you have no idea. Dude, I tell you what. True story. When I went out on my own and we didn't talk for 45 days, that was the plan when we separated, I can't tell you how many times I picked up my phone and I was waiting for the text and it didn't come. And I was like, this is a new world where I can just be myself. And it was dude, I was in the desert. I was just listening to music. It was a whole thing, dude. I was a different person. You know what I'm saying? It was so crazy because there's people that are married are understanding this conversation. There's so much of this, just that beating, that there's so much emotion wrapped up in those years and that time that you spent together. It really is like a reborn. It really is like a rebirth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And you're used to it. You get used to these particular things. I'm 4 years divorced and I still sleep on my side of the bed. Yeah. You get used to these things. Yeah. So yeah.
But it's interesting, right? Because tell me if this happened to you. I've never shared this with anybody, so this is a joke, and I love that it was almost like a secret memo went out to the women network. I didn't even tell anybody, but people found out that I got divorced. Oh man, I was getting DM'd and texts left and right. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was whoa, this is aggressive.
Whoa. What is this?
Yeah. I was wait, I feel better. I've lost 70 pounds. They know I'm on the market. So it was interesting, right? Because I'll be honest, and I never shared this either. I got, because there, that emotion, that love, love, whatever the fuck you want to call it, attention. There was a couple, women, in the first couple of minutes, not even people that I even dated or saw, but you're man, this is interesting, right? But then over time, you start realizing maybe it's not built in the honest of places, right? I think that was that you really have to be open to that, because somebody that had that 6 years, where you're not really feeling the love, that can feel really good, but you realize that it's not really truth.
It's not truth. Yeah. And that's where that journey of authenticity comes in, because, and those people who are listening, as far as, maybe you're in that space, you attract what reflects in your mirror. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, like right away, it's kind of fun and it's exciting to have attention, right? But then, like you said, you're like, maybe not. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting journey, isn't it?
One of the greatest kind of workshops I heard from a friend who was doing like a yoga retreat is the woman made her write down 3 people that she admired, and she write 10 things about those 3 people that you admire, and then she said cross out their name and write your name over it. And she said there's no way that you would see that in them if you didn't have it inside of you. And I think we need to be careful, because when things are coming our way, it's really a reflection, like you just said, of how we're feeling about ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same as far as, really closing that chapter for, as we evolve as humans on this journey, who we attract into our lives. And that's another thing. In forgiving yourself, when divorce can mean many different things, but forgiving that journey as you close that chapter, that was you how many years ago? And as you continue to evolve, perhaps your spouse isn't evolving at the same rate, or evolving in a different way and in a new direction, and to forgive yourself for that.
No, what's interesting, and I said this on my podcast, I think 2 things. I got sober in the middle of this, like we're kind of like working on ourselves and like maybe touching the marriage. I said this to my coach, and it's the firmest thing I believe. The only reason I didn't work out in my marriage earlier is because I knew the moment I did, we would get divorced. There's a lot of scares. There's scared in there, because that's like on top of hey, I'm so, there's all these things, right? And like you wake up, and what he said to me changed my life. He literally said at the end of a call, he changed my life. He said, when are you going to allow yourself off your dissonance? When are you going to reprieve? Because I felt so guilty, right? Because I was drunk for half the marriage, most of the marriage, and I felt like I needed to stay around because I was this person, but I was like, he's like, when are you going to give yourself a reprieve? And that was kind of what did it for me.
Right. Ooh, that's deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he likes to smack me around a lot, but that's the joys of a coach, right? I mean, that is really somebody that's bought into who you are, is not going to put up with your BS, and their best interest is yourself, and we need people like that in our life. And I would imagine, regardless of how you're adjusted now, you and your ex-husband, during that time, you had to surround yourself with the proper people to get you. I mean, dealing with 3 kids, businesses. I mean, it was a lot, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I have a fierce network of people that call me out, that support me, that help me in those darkest hours, but then celebrate in those most exciting hours too. Sure. And really reviewing who are those people on your board of directors, who are they? Because and again, as you evolve, those people evolve too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, as I've journeyed farther and I talk to a lot of people on the podcast, and I hear stories about poverty and families being maybe not in the best financial situation when they grow up. Would you just touch on the amount of strength that it takes to break generational poverty and to get your PhD? I just find so much inspiration and so much, as my friend would say, maybe it's not the greatest way to put it, but he said every now and then in the family's lineages, a stunner needs to come along to show everybody that it's possible. And he just talks about like sometimes you have to be the rocket ship to really, because you know what I always equate it to? when that show Extreme Home Makeover, right? Like, oh, they get them a new house. I'm like, oh, great, they get them a new house. I could care less. When I always started crying? When they gave the kids free college. And I was like, oh my God, that's going to change like 5 generations, right? Could you just touch on like how hard that is to because, they talk about the devil, right? The devil's not in a person. The devil's in a society. It's in an area. It's in a, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't think people that have grown up that way don't understand like just that cycle of just like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, no, completely. It's interesting and it's complex, and there's a lot of facets to it. And so with my method and what I teach, from coming from that and coming from just clawing my way out of the gutter, and figuring out how to, I knew there had to be something more. Just knew it. But getting there, and then one door would open and another door would open, and you're like, oh, okay. How am I gonna get out of this situation? How am I gonna get out of low income housing? How am I gonna get off of food stamps? How am I gonna do this? And the way that I saw was going to college. Now, mind you, I went to college and I went to college some more, and I built my career and I built my career some more. And I was very resourceful, because you can't get out of, you can't break out of that poverty without somehow figuring out how to get around the system. And so, because, not a lot of people know, because they haven't been there. Like when you're on food stamps, when you are in low income housing, the more money you make, the less assistance you get. However, it's a catch-22, because the less income you make, the more assistance you get. But either way, there's a cap, and it's very controlled, and there's no way out. So there's no way to create a savings. It's just simply impossible if you're following, there's only so many hours in a week. And so figuring out how to get around that, I worked 60 to 70 hours a week while helping raise my little sister and raising my daughter without child support and going to school full time. Because I knew that I needed to increase my education as a female. Now, as a male, I might have been able to, go into plumbing or, something different. Now, can women do that? Yes, they can. But I wasn't about to do that. Let's be honest. Okay. So more education, but then that also gives you more debt. And then it gives you a slight increase in pay. Now, the thing that really changed my mindset and really launched my entrepreneurial journey. Now, I've always been an entrepreneur because I've been extremely resourceful, but I didn't understand what passive income was. I didn't understand. I always understood, well, if I want to make more money, I need to work more hours. Sure. But there's only so many hours in the week. I'm like, I need to go and get another certificate. I need to get a knitting certificate. I'm not qualified to do that, so I need a certificate in this and a certificate in that. Once I met and went to my very first One Life Fully Lived conference, that is where the light turned on and the doors started opening. Then I realized, holy moly, I don't have to be working 80 hours a week. I can actually, start to make income in other ways. And that the One Life was the door that opened up to doors I didn't realize were there. Yeah. And that is where systematic oppression ends, is through education and access.
Dude, that's it. It's so funny that you say that, because I think we in America take so many things that we know as just, everybody should know it. And it's not the case. The number one issue in America is financial education. Nobody understands. And I had to work private equity to really understand how money works and where it comes from, and to understand the systems of how it works. And it is not talked about. It's not taught. And that's why I'm obsessed with what Tim's doing and what y'all are doing at One Fully Life, because I think it's when March hit, dude, I come 20 years from the restaurant business. right? When March hit and shit went south, 7 days in, people were texting me, I'm out of money. And I'm like, well, of course you are, because you're a waiter and you've made great money your whole life and not saved any of it. And I thought to myself, okay, Austin, how do you help the most amount of people? And I was like, okay, you go back to high school and middle school and you teach kids about money, savings, assets, investing. It's really the only way. I mean, you hit it on the head. The only way that it changes is by education. And it doesn't have to be formal education. It has to be education in general.
Education, access. And here's the thing, and this is why I think this is so intriguing, and is that me and my story is the way in to help others like me. One Life Fully Lived is the roadmap and the how in which to elevate those people. Because if you, if you were to go to people like me, with people with my story, it might not resonate the same as someone who had lived that specific life in which to turn the light on so that they are willing to digest the information. Same thing with people with your background. If I were to go in to someone with a background that you have and I don't have the same background, people aren't going to digest it the same. However, you just gifted them a roadmap and an opportunity to combat systematic oppression by being that light that says, hey, I understand you, I see you, and here is the map in which to get you out of where you were to where you're going.
People always joke. I say, how do you introduce yourself? I say, meth addict, homeless, alcoholic, divorced. Like right in the first 5 minutes. And everybody's like, why do you do that? And I'm like, because at that moment, it drops them down. They're feeling safe. Well, this fucking dude has some crazy shit. So we're good. And then what I truly realized is like, why was I so stubborn to take 20 years to get sober of alcohol? And I thought to myself, like, because I was strong enough, but more importantly, now I have an opportunity. This podcast, like me helping people out, random people, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Nothing. And when you understand that one person that you might help over there might affect 30 people, like how could you not wake up every day, right? And that's what we have to do is we all have our stories. Everybody. Perfect example. I have a friend I interviewed. I'm going to see him on Thursday in Colorado. He's beat cocaine addiction, lost 70 pounds, lost his dad 6 months before his dad killed himself 6 months before he was born. He's beat cancer twice at 26. All right. And I said, man, I haven't had a cancer. I wouldn't know. And he goes, stop right now. He goes, adversity is a universal thing. Doesn't matter if it was cancer, sexual addiction, drug addiction. He goes, we can all relate to that. And if we relate to that, then we all have our stories to share. And I think that's the key, right? Because I grew up in a nice neighborhood on a country club. My dad's a doctor. I didn't think I had a story to tell. And granted, I was the one that made my story worse. But either, regardless of that, everybody has a story to tell. And that's why I champion everybody to own their story and share it out there. And I would imagine once you owned your story and gave and released the empowerment from it that it was holding over you, I would imagine that you felt lighter and were able to share your story.
Yeah, I was able to flip the script around what happened to me to happening for me. Because now, you could sit in a victim mindset and you could be angry, and it will just completely destroy your body, in your mind, in your relationships. Or you can take a deep breath, sit with it, think about it. Now, don't get me wrong, it's hard work. But how, sitting there and thinking, damn, like, why me? Right? And that is a victim mindset, but it's also a very valid question. Why me? And being able to say, all right, then why not me? How can I take all the shit and turn it into a way to help others see and help others, pay it forward in some way to help other people see that they're worthy. Because I spent my whole life understanding that I wasn't worthy. And, and growing up and people would say, well, what in the world, what are you even talking about? What do you mean not worthy? You have all these things that I would love to have. And when you look in the mirror, you see nothingness. And so developing your worthiness and seeing, that I realized that I wasn't just something to be abused and used, but I can actually take the things that happened to me and as a pay it forward, as a way to help other people see that they're also worthy.
And it's funny, you help people and you coach people. There's a common theme that runs through it all. It's two things. One, you don't love yourself. And the second thing is the stories that you create around the fact that you don't love yourself.
Right.
I mean, it's
it
really,
all comes back to self-love. That's right.
That's it. I mean, it really is about, and it's not an ego thing. It's not you're walking around with your chest out. It's just the fact that you're comfortable in your gifts. And I think there's ways around training yourself, right? And my client asked me, like, what do you think I should do this week? And I was like, do something physically active that would push you to want to give up. Like, and then get over that hurdle. But you're also understanding where he's at mentally to be able to take on that task, right? Like 2 weeks ago, he couldn't have took it on, but this week he's ready, right? And so that's playing the dance with yourself and putting things in front of yourself when you're ready to feel that victory, and then you're building that confidence on and on and on. If I want to respect your time. If you were somebody that is in a situation right now where maybe they've lost their job, or maybe they've in a relationship that's not serving them, what are the 3 things that you would tell them that your group teaches to start if they're just looking to start somewhere? The best advice that you can give.
I would say 1, gratitude. So having an element of grace with yourself and expressing and figuring out something to be grateful for. What's that one thing that you're grateful for? Now, when you're in a dark place, it's hard to find that sometimes. But with me and what I did, I had to borrow the love that I had for another person until my self-love caught up. And so I borrowed the love I had for my daughter until my self-love caught up. And then I realized that as incrementally as I started to work on that, then I started to learn my own self-love and realize that I deserved it, because it comes back to what your love, again, what you feel you deserve, and even deeper, your self-worth. So where do you start? You start with that gratitude. You start with, how do I, maybe I don't truly feel that I deserve a change because it's hard things that I need to do. But what if there's another person or that gratitude, whatever that gratefulness is, that you can borrow in which to move you forward. So that's what I did. As I had that love for my daughter and I knew that she deserved more. And someone might think, well, I want to use that gratitude that I have, that grace in myself, in order to move forward. So incrementally, 5 minutes at a time, pushing toward that self-love work. And then moving next into the next step of focusing on that goal. What's that next thing? Like you said, I'm going to push myself to the exhaustion and see where I'm at emotionally, and look at that, journal in it, sit in it, and feel that emotion. And what is it that I need to use to tap into that in which to continue to push forward? So that would be the first task that I would say. Is sometimes you have to borrow the love you have for another person until your self-love catches up. And sometimes that is the light that another person sees in you. Now, anyone who goes on these journeys, and when that light turns on and they're ready to try something different, anyone who is successful in their own definition didn't do it on their own. And if they said they did, they're lying. there's someone who saw something in you at some point, and maybe you rejected it, but you borrow that light that someone else sees in you until your light catches up.
You're destroying it right now. No, I mean, it's the truth. I mean, dude, I could talk about 3 Go Abundance guys right now. You know, Matty A, Jake Harris, and then Tim Rode, that saw things in me when I was just getting sober that I didn't see in myself. And when those guys tell you, like, dude, you can do anything you want, like, you're like, oh, well, fuck, maybe I can. And then you're kind of playing tricks with your mind, you know, and then, like, you're like, shit, I mean, I guess I could. And then you, like, just like you said, you catch up into your own stuff now, and now I can return the favor to other people. And so it's super powerful, mind-blowing stuff. So if people wanted to figure out how to find you, how to find your network and all those things, how would they do that?
They'd go to CarolynColleen.com. That's where I have my network. That's where my academy is. That's starting November 22nd. And they can get more information there.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you share it, send it out to your friends, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.